She commands every boardroom she walks into. The presentation is flawless. The strategy airtight. The numbers so sharp they could cut glass. A Harvard MBA, a star employee. The kind of woman companies lean on to save millions. Yet in the same breath, she'll insist that men must always pay, because that's what gentlemen do. Her colleagues exchange quiet glances, unsure whether she's serious or simply oblivious. Later, she'll complain over coffee that her last 3 relationships ended without warning, baffled at why men keep drifting away. How can someone so brilliant at work seem so blind when it comes to love? You've probably seen her before. Maybe she was a stunning co-worker who could untangle spreadsheets but never noticed how her boyfriend's patience frayed. Or a close friend with a PhD in psychology who believed her beauty exempted her from learning the basics of partnership. Outwardly flawless, inwardly struggling. This isn't a rare case. It's a pattern. One so widespread that you can find examples everywhere you look. And the reason behind it is far darker than most realize. The paradox is simple. The more beautiful a woman is, the less she learns about relationships. Not because she's unintelligent, but because beauty distorts reality. It kills the one thing she needs most: truth. A man might tolerate years of chaos, drama, or poor choices simply because her beauty gives him reason to. He'll lie, flatter, avoid confrontation, and say what she wants to hear because honesty risks losing access. Over time, her entire worldview is built not on reality, but on carefully tailored illusions. Beauty becomes not her blessing, but the curse that blinds her to the very truths she needs to live well. This process doesn't begin in adulthood. It starts much earlier. Almost suddenly, picture a 14-year-old girl. Yesterday she was invisible. A teenager fumbling with homework, sitting unnoticed in the cafeteria. Today, puberty arrives like a lightning strike, and everything shifts. Teachers give her more attention. Fathers of her friends linger in conversation. Strangers stare openly on the street. Overnight, she inherits enormous power. But inside, she's still a child. Her age is 14. Her emotional maturity is 14. But she now carries the kind of influence that can sway grown men. And here lies the problem. She has gained power without the wisdom to wield it. From that moment on, the air around her changes. Men no longer speak with pure honesty. They adapt. They calculate. They tell her what she wants to hear because that's how they gain access to her attention, her approval, her body. Nietzsche once wrote, "Power makes us stupid when it shields us from consequence." He was speaking of rulers and kings, but the principle is the same here. When someone receives immense power without equal accountability, truth becomes the first casualty. What follows is a slow erosion of reality itself. Think about what that means in practical terms. Every compliment, every opinion, every piece of feedback she receives is filtered through desire. If she asks whether her new hairstyle looks good, the men around her know there is only one safe answer. If she insists her ex-boyfriend was at fault for the breakup, few will dare to suggest otherwise. And when someone occasionally tries to pierce the illusion with honesty, the backlash teaches her to treat truth as a personal attack rather than a gift. The longer this dynamic continues, the less she is able to separate what is real from what is merely convenient for others to tell her. The tragedy is that she never notices the moment this shift takes place. To her, the lies seem like kindness. The validation feels like truth. The approval seems like confirmation that her worldview is correct. She doesn't see that she has stepped into a parallel universe, one where cause and effect follow different laws than they do for everyone else. Over time, she builds her entire understanding of relationships, men, and even human nature on foundations of sand. And what happens when you try to build a house on sand? Eventually, the collapse is inevitable. This is why, years later, you meet the woman who seems so brilliant in every area of life, yet fails repeatedly in love. The one who can outthink competitors in the marketplace but cannot fathom why men grow cold. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is the extinction of truth in her world. From adolescence onward, She was never given the feedback that would have corrected her course. She was trained, unintentionally, to believe in a reality that does not exist. And when she brings that distorted model into adult relationships, disaster is the only possible outcome. Here is where we begin to see the hidden cost of beauty. It isn't just about jealousy, competition, or envy. It's about how beauty changes the way other people behave, and how those changes deprive her of the very lessons that build wisdom. By the time she realizes something is wrong, the damage is already deep. Failed relationships, emotional exhaustion, and a creeping sense of confusion follow her like shadows. She cannot understand why her advantages, her looks, her achievements, her intelligence don't translate into success in love. She doesn't see that the system itself was rigged against her from the start. But this is only the beginning of the story. Because once truth disappears from a woman's world, it doesn't just vanish quietly. It gets replaced by something else. Something far more dangerous. Strategic deception, a whole machinery of lies, incentives, and behaviors designed not to guide her toward reality, but to manipulate her for short-term gain. This is where the tragedy deepens, and where we must look closer to understand why beauty, which should be an advantage, often becomes the seed of lifelong relational chaos. Once truth has died in her world, something else takes its place. Not silence, not emptiness, but a constant hum of strategic deception. This is not a few lies whispered here and there. It is a full-blown system, a marketplace of manipulation where men instinctively learn which currency buys access and which bankrupts them. In this economy, honesty is worthless, but validation spends like gold. The logic is painfully simple. Being honest with a beautiful woman rarely opens the door to intimacy. In fact, it usually slams it shut. Being dishonest, telling her what she wants to hear, playing into her illusions, often does. Men are not fools. They may be reckless. They may be impatient. But when it comes to securing something they desire, they adapt quickly. They test the waters. They learn what works, and then they repeat it. Very soon, dishonesty becomes the default survival strategy. I call this the honesty-sex contradiction. It's like a game where the prize is affection, and the rules are clear. Honesty leads to rejection. Dishonesty to reward. Imagine a classroom where the teacher asks open-ended questions, but punishes any student who gives a different answer than the one she'd already decided was correct. It looks like a test of knowledge, but in reality, it's a test of compliance. Students stop thinking. They stop trying. They simply learn which response earns praise. Why risk humiliation when flattery guarantees survival? Now picture this same classroom dynamic transposed into relationships. She asks, "Do you like my new approach?" She says she wants honesty, but what she really wants is affirmation. If you say yes, you pass. If you say no, you are branded unsupportive, cruel, or disloyal. In time, men stop playing the game for truth. They play it for access. They play it for sex. They play it to keep their place in her orbit. And slowly, she forgets that there was ever such a thing as honest feedback at all. To see this more clearly, think of the corporate world. Imagine a CEO with a fragile ego, one who cannot tolerate being challenged. Her employees learn quickly. Disagree with the boss and you're gone. Agree with her, even when she's wrong, and you'll survive. Soon the office is full of yes people, nodding in unison while privately working around her disastrous ideas. The company rots from the inside out, not because the employees are lazy, but because survival demands deception. Beautiful women, whether they realize it or not, often occupy this same position. They hold so much power over male desire that men treat honesty as career suicide. The result is an ecosystem where lies thrive like weeds in a neglected garden. But not all men lie. There are rare exceptions. Men who resist the gravitational pull of deception. They fall into three groups. First, there are men of principle, the ones who value truth above reward. These men exist, but they are few, and they pay dearly for their honesty. They lose access. They are pushed away. and often their voices are drowned out by the chorus of flatterers around them. Then there are men on the autism spectrum whose brains simply don't compute the value of strategic dishonesty. They speak with blunt accuracy, unable or unwilling to polish their words into pleasing shapes. To them, saying anything other than the truth feels absurd. And finally, there are family men, fathers, brothers, uncles, who have no agenda to win her body. Their love is long-term, rooted in concern rather than conquest. They alone can absorb her fury, her denial, her tears, because their relationship with her doesn't depend on sexual approval. But notice the pattern. These truth-tellers are either immune to her beauty or motivated by something deeper than desire. For everyone else, for the overwhelming majority of men, lying becomes not a vice but a rational strategy. A system where honesty costs everything and deception earns rewards cannot produce anything else. And this is where the damage becomes systemic, not personal. It's no longer about one man deceiving one woman. It's about an entire social structure that teaches her lies from every direction until reality itself becomes unrecognizable. Psychologists have a name for the conditioning that cements this: intermittent reinforcement. It is the most powerful form of behavioral training ever discovered. If you punish honesty most of the time and reward lies consistently, people learn quickly. They stop being honest. They stop risking punishment. They stick with what works. In this case, lies always work better than truth. The woman unknowingly becomes the architect of her own deception, rewarding dishonesty until it becomes the only language spoken around her. Freud once remarked, "We are never so defenseless as when we love." For men, the defenselessness often translates into surrendering honesty, convinced that it's the price of admission into intimacy. And for women, the cost of that surrender is catastrophic, the extinction of reality itself. Think for a moment about what this does to her life. Every decision she makes about relationships is built on bad data. She believes her last breakup wasn't her fault because a man told her so. She assumes her demands are reasonable because no one dares challenge them. She convinces herself her approach works, when in truth it has failed her repeatedly. Each lie shields her from pain in the short term, but builds the foundation for greater pain later. And because she punishes anyone who offers truth, she cuts off the very path that could save her from repeated disaster. This is the machinery of deception, a system so tight, so consistent, that by adulthood her entire worldview is built on illusions. And this raises the real question: what happens when she tries to build lasting relationships upon soil so poisoned by lies? What happens when beauty, which promised to open every door, instead becomes the very thing that ensures those doors close one by one? The most striking contrast appears when you compare beautiful women with those considered average. Average women still face dishonesty, yes, but not to the same suffocating degree, because the rewards for deception are lower. Men are less motivated to bend reality for them. They receive at least some honest feedback. A man may tell her directly when she's being unreasonable. He may walk away if her expectations are unrealistic, because the cost of leaving is not unbearable. This occasional correction gives her a chance to grow, to adjust, to align her understanding of relationships with reality. By the time she reaches adulthood, her view of men, while not perfect, is at least somewhat tethered to truth. But the beautiful woman is different. She can behave poorly for years without ever feeling the weight of consequence. Her beauty buys tolerance that shields her from correction. Men will endure chaos, entitlement, or emotional storms simply because her appearance makes the suffering feel worthwhile. This insulation becomes deadly. Mistakes that should have been small course corrections in her teens and 20s compound into disasters by her 30s and 40s. By the time the truth finally arrives, it does not come as gentle feedback. It comes as collapse, failed marriages, betrayal, loneliness she cannot comprehend. Here is where the tragedy reaches its peak. She had the most options, the most attention, the most adoration, and yet she repeatedly turned victory into defeat. Unlimited access to men, but repeated cycles of heartbreak, endless opportunities, but outcomes worse than those faced by women with far fewer advantages. The irony is cruel. The very thing that should have secured her happiness instead sabotaged it from the inside. She has lived decades under the illusion that beauty alone would carry her, and then one day she awakens to realize it has carried her straight into emptiness. History and philosophy warn us of this dynamic. Carl Jung observed that what you resist not only persists, but grows. The truths she resists, about accountability, about humility, about partnership, don't disappear. They accumulate in the shadow of her life. And when that shadow finally emerges, it does so with destructive force. The failed relationship at 25 becomes the bitter divorce at 40. The small arrogance of youth becomes the hardened entitlement of middle age. The lie that beauty will always be enough becomes the cruel reality that it never was. Consider a story I once heard about a woman named Elena. In her 20s, she could walk into any room and command attention instantly. Men showered her with gifts, compliments, and promises. She believed this was normal, that it would always be so. She dismissed good men who tried to hold her accountable, preferring the validation of those who never challenged her. By 38, she had 2 divorces behind her and a string of failed relationships that left her disillusioned. The same beauty that once opened every door no longer carried the same weight. What remained was confusion. Why had things gone so wrong when she seemed to have everything? The truth was simple. Her understanding of relationships had been built on decades of lies, and when the lies collapsed, her foundation went with them. This delayed consequence is the hallmark of beauty's curse. Average women stumble early, but they learn early. They adjust course before the damage is too great. Beautiful women stumble later, when the stakes are far higher, and the cost of correction is devastating. By the time the feedback finally arrives, it's not a gentle lesson, it's a brutal awakening, and for many, it comes too late to undo the years wasted. There is also the cruel arithmetic of attraction. A woman's beauty can buy her tolerance in her 20s, but no beauty lasts forever. As time passes, the margin for error shrinks. Men who once endured dysfunction in exchange for beauty no longer find the deal worth it. The patience dries up. The willingness to absorb chaos fades. What once seemed charming becomes exhausting. The window for correction closes, and with it, the hope of building the kind of relationship she always thought would be waiting for her. If you've ever watched a stunning woman, admired by all, gradually end up alone, bitter, or confused, this is the hidden pattern you are seeing. It wasn't stupidity. It wasn't fate. It was the slow erosion of truth, the extinction of feedback, the insulation from consequence that her beauty created. She wasn't doomed by her looks, but by the environment those looks produced. And yet, the story does not end here. Because beauty's curse is not only about delayed consequence, it is about the imbalance between power and wisdom. She received immense influence before she had the maturity to wield it. And when power grows faster than wisdom, disaster always follows. This is not only a story about women. History is full of examples. Emperors, celebrities, prodigies who gained influence too early, without the scars that teach restraint. Beauty is simply one of the most common ways this imbalance plays out in relationships. Which raises the question, what happens when someone inherits great power without the wisdom to guide it? What happens when beauty hands her influence over men's hearts and choices long before she's ready to handle it? That is where the final and most destructive stage begins, the power-wisdom disaster. The core of the tragedy lies here, a mismatch between the size of her power and the depth of her wisdom. At 13 or 14, she inherited influence over men's thoughts, decisions, and behaviors that could overwhelm even the most seasoned adult. But at that age, her judgment was still forming, her understanding of people still fragile. Power without wisdom is like fire in the hands of a child. It dazzles at first, but eventually it burns everything it touches. I call this the power-wisdom disaster. Influence without guidance, authority without grounding, reward without responsibility. Most forms of power come slowly. tempered by trial and error. A business leader rises through smaller roles before steering a company. A politician climbs through years of setbacks before holding office. Even an artist spends countless hours in obscurity before reaching fame. In each case, experience tempers her, and consequence shapes judgment. But beauty bypasses this process. One day she is invisible. The next she is worshipped. No training, no hardship, no gradual adjustment. The power arrives instantly, and with it, the false belief that this power can substitute for wisdom. For a time, it seems to work. But the very thing that carried her forward ensures she never develops the skills needed to sustain her success. The results are predictable. She can attract, but not maintain. She can inspire devotion, but not loyalty. She can ignite passion, but not sustain intimacy. Her influence grows, but her understanding does not, and the gap between them becomes a chasm she cannot cross. In psychology, this is called reality distortion, the gradual separation between how someone believes the world works and how it actually does. Each lie she rewards widens the gap. Each truth she punishes pushes reality further away. By adulthood, she is no longer just misinformed. She is trapped in an alternate world where her expectations no longer match the laws of cause and effect. It would be easy to blame her, to say she should have known better. But this misses the larger point. She is not the villain of this story. She is its victim. The system itself set her up for failure. Men lied not because they were evil, but because the incentives pushed them to. She punished honesty, not because she was malicious, but because her entire life had trained her to. This is what makes the cycle so powerful. Everyone behaves rationally within it, yet the outcome is collectively irrational. Everyone loses. She loses the chance to build real love. Men lose their integrity and authenticity. Society loses the potential for relationships built on truth rather than manipulation. It is a tragedy, not of individuals, but of structure. And yet, there is a way out, but it requires enormous courage. For women, it means actively seeking truth even when it wounds. It means creating space for honest feedback. Even when it challenges every assumption, it means valuing character as much as appearance, and wisdom as much as power. For men, it requires daring to tell the truth, even when it costs them access. It means prioritizing long-term outcomes over short-term gains. It means refusing to enable dysfunction even when enabling feels easier in the moment. And for society, it means teaching that beauty is not a substitute for competence, and that appearance cannot replace the skills that sustain love. Alexander Solzhenitsyn once wrote, "The line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being." The same is true for truth and lies. Each of us must decide whether we will speak honestly, even at a cost, or remain silent in the comfort of illusion. The lies may bring peace for a day, but they destroy futures. The truth may burn in the short term, but it saves in the long term. Beauty without truth is a curse, but beauty joined with truth can become a blessing. The difference lies in whether courage is chosen over comfort. So what is the ultimate lesson? That beauty is not stupidity, but that beauty creates an environment where relationship intelligence struggles to grow. The tragedy is not that beautiful women are victims of their own attractiveness. The tragedy is that the very system designed to reward their beauty slowly robs them of the wisdom to use it well. The ones who escape this cycle, who learn to value truth early, who embrace accountability, who cultivate character as carefully as appearance, become rare, extraordinary women. They keep both their beauty and their happiness. The rest become prisoners of illusions. Their lives a testament to what happens when power grows faster than wisdom. And if you are listening closely, you will see that this isn't only about women. It's a mirror for all of us. Whenever power comes without accountability, whether in politics, business, fame, or relationships, it destroys rather than builds. Beauty is simply one of the clearest, most tragic examples. Understanding this dynamic is not just about analyzing others, it is about protecting yourself. It is about choosing truth even when it costs you. Because in the end, truth is always the only foundation that holds. Lies may buy you time, but truth is the only thing that builds a life. If these hidden dynamics have opened your eyes, know that this is only the surface, the psychology of attraction, the shadows of human behavior, and the forces that shape our relationships run deeper still. And in the videos ahead, we'll uncover them together. Because to navigate the modern world without seeing these patterns is to walk blindfolded into disaster. But with understanding, with honesty, and with courage, you can walk a different path. One where both beauty and wisdom can coexist, and where power no longer destroys, but serves